Have you ever been told that renting is throwing money away? That owning property is the ultimate sign of financial success? That if you don't buy a house, you're wasting your life? Millions of people believe this without question. And for many of them, buying property becomes the exact moment their financial stability collapses. Not because owning is bad, but because they bought for the wrong reasons, at the wrong time, with the wrong structure. And the consequences can last decades. This isn't about whether owning property is good or bad. It's about understanding when it makes sense and when it destroys your finances. Because the decision to buy a house is one of the biggest financial commitments you'll ever make. And most people make it based on emotion, social pressure, and myths passed down through generations. Not logic, not planning, not math. Let's start with the most dangerous belief: that rent is wasted money. People repeat this phrase as if it were a universal truth, but it's not. Rent is the price you pay for housing flexibility, liquidity, and freedom from maintenance costs, property taxes, and market risk. It's not waste, it's a choice. And sometimes it's the smartest choice you can make, especially if buying would drain your emergency fund, lock you into debt you can't handle, or force you to sacrifice other financial priorities like investing, education, or career mobility. Buying property ties up enormous amounts of capital. The down payment alone can consume years of savings. Then come the monthly mortgage payments, which often exceed what rent would cost for the same space. Add property taxes, insurance, maintenance, repairs, and the opportunity cost of not investing that money elsewhere. Suddenly, owning isn't as cheap as it seemed. And if you bought at the wrong time or in the wrong location, the property might not even appreciate in value. You could be stuck with an illiquid asset that drains your cash flow and limits your options. Here's what most people don't calculate: the true cost of ownership. They compare the monthly rent to the monthly mortgage payment and think, if I'm paying this much in rent, I might as well own. But that comparison is incomplete. Owning involves dozens of hidden costs that renters never face: a new roof, a broken heater, termites, foundation issues, homeowners association fees. And unlike rent, these costs are unpredictable. You can't budget for them with precision. You can only hope they don't happen at the worst possible time. Then there's the issue of liquidity. When you own property, your wealth is trapped in bricks and mortar. You can't access it without selling or taking on more debt. And selling isn't instant. It takes months, sometimes longer. If you lose your job, need to relocate, or face a financial emergency, that house isn't going to help you. It's going to anchor you in place. Renters, on the other hand, can move quickly. They can chase better opportunities. They can adapt. That flexibility has enormous financial value, especially in uncertain times. Another overlooked factor: leverage cuts both ways. When you buy property with a mortgage, you're using debt to amplify your investment. If the property increases in value, you gain. But if it decreases, you lose. And not just a little. Because you only put down a fraction of the purchase price, a small decline in property value can wipe out your entire equity. This is what happened to millions of people during the 2008 financial crisis. They bought homes they couldn't afford, believing prices would always rise. When the market crashed, they were left with mortgages larger than the value of their homes. Many lost everything. So when does buying make sense? When you plan to stay in one location for at least 5 to 7 years, when you have a stable income and a solid emergency fund, when the monthly cost of owning, including all hidden expenses, is comparable to or less than renting, when you're not sacrificing other financial goals to make it happen, when the property is in a location with strong, long-term demand, and when you're buying because it fits your life, not because someone told you it's what adults are supposed to do. But even when all those conditions are met, buying is still a trade-off. You're choosing stability and predictability over flexibility and liquidity. You're betting that the property will hold or increase its value. You're committing to years of payments, maintenance and responsibility. That's not inherently good or bad. It's just a decision. And like all financial decisions, it should be made with full awareness of the costs, risks, and alternatives. Now let's talk about the mental traps that push people into bad property decisions. The first is social pressure. Family, friends, colleagues, everyone has an opinion about when you should buy. They'll say things like, "You're not getting any younger," or "Rent is just making someone else rich." These comments create a sense of urgency and shame. They make you feel like you're falling behind. But financial decisions should never be driven by what others think. They should be driven by what makes sense for your situation. The second trap is anchoring to the past. Your parents bought a house at 25 and paid it off in 15 years. But the economic conditions were completely different. Wages were higher relative to housing costs. Interest rates were different. Job security was stronger. Comparing your situation to theirs is pointless. The world has changed, the rules have changed, and pretending otherwise leads to bad decisions. The third trap is the fear of missing out. When property prices are rising, people panic. They think, "If I don't buy now, I'll never be able to afford it." So they stretch their budget, take on excessive debt, and buy at the peak of the market. Then prices stagnate or fall, and they're stuck. This is classic FOMO, and it's one of the most expensive emotional mistakes you can make. Markets move in cycles. There will always be another opportunity. Patience and discipline beat panic every time. The fourth trap is confusing a home with an investment. A home is where you live. An investment is something you buy to generate returns. The two are not the same. Yes, property can appreciate, but it's not guaranteed. And even if it does, that appreciation is only useful if you sell. Until then, it's just a number on paper. Meanwhile, you're paying real money every month to maintain it. If you want to invest in real estate, buy property you don't live in, rent it out, generate cash flow. That's an investment. Your primary residence is a lifestyle choice, not a wealth-building strategy. Let's also address the myth that paying rent is paying someone else's mortgage. Technically, yes. But so what? When you pay for food, you're funding the grocery store owner. When you pay for a car, you're funding the manufacturer. That's how commerce works. Rent is a service. You're paying for housing without the burden of ownership. And if that allows you to save more, invest more, and maintain financial flexibility, it's a perfectly rational choice. The idea that rent is inherently wasteful is just a mental frame designed to sell you on ownership. It's not based on logic. Here's the reality. Buying property is not a shortcut to wealth. It's a long-term commitment with significant costs, risks, and trade-offs. For some people, at times, in some places, it makes sense. For others, it's a financial disaster. The key is knowing the difference, and the only way to know is to run the numbers, consider your goals, and ignore the noise from people who have no idea what your financial situation actually looks like. So what should you do? First, calculate the true cost of ownership in your area. Include the down payment, monthly mortgage, property taxes, insurance, maintenance, opportunity cost, and transaction costs when you eventually sell. Compare that to the cost of renting. Be honest with yourself. If owning costs significantly more and you don't have a strong reason to stay in one place for many years, renting is probably the better choice. Second, make sure you have a solid financial foundation before you even consider buying. That means no high-interest debt, a fully funded emergency fund, and a clear understanding of your long-term goals. Buying property should never come at the expense of financial security. If it does, you're not ready. Third, resist the pressure to buy just because others expect it. Your timeline is your own. Your priorities are your own. If renting allows you to live the life you want, save more, and maintain flexibility, own that decision. Don't apologize for it. Don't justify it. Just live it. Fourth, if you do decide to buy, Buy conservatively. Don't stretch your budget to get the biggest house or the best neighborhood. Buy something you can comfortably afford, even if your income drops. Leave room for life to happen, because it will. And finally, remember that property is just one piece of a financial strategy. It's not the foundation of wealth. Behavior is, saving is, investing is, discipline is. Owning property doesn't make you financially successful. Managing money well does, and you can do that whether you own or rent. The house you live in should support your life, not define it. It should give you stability, comfort, and peace of mind. But it shouldn't trap you, drain you, or force you into financial compromises you'll regret. If buying accomplishes that, great. If renting does, great. There's no universal right answer. There's only what works for you, based on your situation, your goals, and your values. So before you sign that mortgage, ask yourself, am I buying because it makes financial sense, or because I think I'm supposed to? Am I ready for the responsibility, the costs, and the limitations? Or am I chasing a dream that someone else sold me? Because the difference between those two mindsets can determine whether property becomes your foundation or your burden. Ownership isn't the goal. Financial freedom is. And sometimes the path to freedom means staying light, staying flexible, and letting go of the idea that you need to own something to prove you've made it. You don't. You just need to make decisions that align with your reality, not someone else's expectations. At Mind of Value, we don't sell shortcuts. We share what really matters. The myth of property ownership is powerful because it's deeply emotional. It's tied to identity, status, and the idea of permanence in an uncertain world. But emotions don't pay mortgages. Logic does. And the logic is clear. Buying property is a tool, not a requirement. Use it when it makes sense. Avoid it when it doesn't. And never ever let anyone convince you that your financial worth is determined by whether you own 4 walls and a roof. Because in the end, wealth isn't about what you own. It's about what you control. And if you're drowning in debt, trapped in a location, and stressed about every unexpected expense, you don't control anything. You're controlled by the property, by the payments, by the decision you made without fully understanding the cost. So take your time, do the math, ignore the pressure, and make the choice that serves your future, not your ego. That's how you win.